May 16, 1943. 21:39 hours. RAF Scampton, Lincolnshire. The sun hangs low over the flat Lincolnshire countryside, casting long shadows across the concrete aprons of Royal Air Force Scampton. Wing Commander Guy Gibson stands beside his Lancaster bomber, ED-932AG, running his hand along the fuselage as ground crews make final checks on the aircraft's four-main engines. The bomber looks different from standard Lancasters. Its bomb bay doors have been removed, exposing a massive cylindrical device suspended transversely beneath the belly. The weapon weighs 9,000 pounds and rotates on a belt-driven mechanism that connects to a hydraulic motor. No one outside this airfield knows what it is. Most of the men who will carry it tonight learned of its existence only weeks ago. Gibson is 24 years old. His chest carries the ribbons of the Distinguished Service Order and Bar, the Distinguished Flying Cross and Bar. He has flown over 170 combat operations. Tonight, he will lead 19 Lancaster bombers on a mission that military planners have called impossible for 3 years. The target, the massive concrete dams that hold back millions of tons of water in Germany's industrial Ruhr Valley. The weapon, an invention that defies conventional bombing logic, designed by a man the Air Ministry initially dismissed as a dreamer. 50 yards away, Flight Lieutenant David Maltby climbs into his aircraft, J. Johnny. He is tall, methodical, the kind of pilot who triple-checks every instrument before takeoff. Behind him, his bomb aimer, Pilot Officer John Fort, settles into the nose compartment with his rudimentary bomb sight, 2 pieces of wood nailed together in a Y shape with nails driven through at specific angles. This crude device will need to achieve what the Norden bomb sight in American fortresses cannot, precision to within yards, at night, at 240 miles per hour, at exactly 60 feet above the water. The air smells of aviation fuel and spring grass. Across the field, 18 other crews prepare their aircraft. Some write last letters. Some joke nervously. Some simply stare at the strange weapons beneath their bombers and wonder if the calculations are correct. They have trained for 6 weeks on low-level flight, learning to skim across water at altitudes that would be suicidal in daylight. They have practiced on British reservoirs, dropping practice weapons, perfecting the timing. Now they will attempt what Barnes Wallis promised them could work. They will make a bomb skip across water like a stone thrown by a child, deliver it directly against the dam wall, and let it sink to the precise depth where hydrostatic pressure will drive the explosion deep into concrete. Gibson checks his watch. Takeoff is in 10 minutes. The first wave, 9 aircraft, will launch at 21:39 hours precisely. They will fly north to the coast, cross the North Sea at wavetop height to avoid German radar, then navigate 400 miles deep into enemy territory using nothing but moonlight and dead reckoning. The moon is nearly full tonight. They will need it. They will also be exposed by it. Group Captain Charles Whitworth, the station commander, walks among the aircraft with Air Officer Commanding Ralph Cochrane. They do not speak. There is nothing left to say. The operation has been approved at the highest levels. Churchill himself has been briefed. The targets are vital: the Möhne Dam, which holds back the Möhne Reservoir, the Eder Dam, controlling the Eder River, and the Salt Dam, a secondary target. If breached, the dams will release torrents that will flood factories, destroy infrastructure, and cripple the Nazi war machine's ability to produce steel, munitions, and electricity. The psychological impact will be devastating, but the cost will be high. The planners know this. The crews know this. At 60 feet, flying at night, over enemy territory bristling with anti-aircraft guns, losses will be severe. Still, they go. Gibson swings himself up into ED-932G through the forward hatch. Inside, the Lancaster smells of metal and oil and the rubber of oxygen masks. His flight engineer, Sergeant John Pulford, is already at his station, checking fuel gauges. The wireless operator, Flight Lieutenant Robert Hutchison, tests his radio equipment. In the nose, Pilot Officer Frederick Spafford, Spam, lies prone in the bomb aimer's position, staring down through the perspex at the concrete below. In the rear turret, Flight Sergeant George Deering settles behind his 4.303 Browning machine guns, scanning the sky. The engines cough, then roar to life one by one. The sound is overwhelming, 4 Rolls-Royce Merlins producing 1,280 horsepower each, a combined thunder that rattles teeth and bones. Across the airfield, other Lancasters ignite their engines. The noise becomes a physical force. At 21:39 hours precisely, Gibson releases the brakes. ED-932 rolls forward, gathering speed, the weight of the cylindrical bomb pulling at the airframe. At 110 miles per hour, the Lancaster lifts off, climbing slowly into the darkening sky. Behind him, 8 more bombers follow at intervals, forming the first wave. Their course is set. Their fate is sealed. Operation Chastise has begun. 3 years earlier, September 1940, Brooklands, Surrey. Barnes Wallis sits at his drafting table in the Vickers Armstrong design office, surrounded by blueprints, mathematical calculations, and scale models. He is 53 years old, a man with a high forehead, penetrating eyes, and the stubborn intensity of someone who refuses to accept the word impossible. Around him, Britain is under siege. The Luftwaffe bombs London nightly. Invasion seems imminent. The nation is alone and desperate. Wallis has designed the Wellesley bomber and the Wellington, aircraft that have served the RAF well. But bombs do not obsess him now. Dams do. Specifically, the dams of the Ruhr Valley, which hold back vast reservoirs that supply water to Germany's industrial heartland. The Ruhr produces 70% of Germany's steel, 2/3 of its coal. Without water, the factories die. Without factories, the war machine starves. The problem is that dams are nearly indestructible. The Möhne Dam, the largest, is 131 feet high and 112 feet thick at the base. It holds back 140 million tons of water. Conventional bombs dropped from altitude have proven useless. They miss by hundreds of feet, or they hit but fail to penetrate the massive concrete. Torpedo bombers cannot operate in the narrow valleys. The dams are, by all conventional military analysis, invulnerable. Wallis does not accept this. For months, he has been experimenting with models, dropping spheres into tanks of water, observing how they behave. He has read obscure papers on hydrodynamics and wave propagation. He has calculated the force required to breach reinforced concrete when delivered as a shockwave through water rather than air. His conclusion: a large explosive charge detonated at depth, directly against the dam wall, will create a pressure wave that will crack the structure. The water itself will do the rest, forcing the crack wider until the dam fails catastrophically. But how to deliver such a charge? A bomb dropped from altitude will sink in the wrong place. A torpedo will be stopped by anti-torpedo nets. The answer comes to him in stages, piece by piece, until one afternoon he watches his grandchildren skipping stones across a pond. The stones bounce across the surface, covering distance without sinking, until they finally slow and drop. What if a bomb could do the same? Wallis begins calculations. A cylindrical bomb, spun backwards before release, will have enough backspin to bounce when it strikes water. The spin will keep it stable, allow it to skip across the surface multiple times, each bounce carrying it closer to the dam wall. When it finally contacts the wall, the backspin will grip the concrete and the bomb will roll down the face, sinking to the optimal depth, 30 feet below the surface, before a hydrostatic pistol detonates it. The explosion will occur where the water's pressure is greatest, where the concrete is most vulnerable, where the shockwave will transfer maximum force into the structure. It is elegant. It is revolutionary. It is utterly unproven. Wallis takes his proposal to the Air Ministry. They listen politely and dismiss him. The idea is too strange, too risky, too experimental. Britain needs practical weapons, not scientific fantasies. Wallis persists. He writes papers, builds models, conducts tests in water tanks. He proves mathematically that the concept will work. Still, the ministry resists. Then, in 1942, the political winds shift. Churchill's scientific advisor, Professor Frederick Lindemann, hears of Wallis's work. Lindemann is intrigued. He arranges a demonstration. Wallis travels to a testing ground and launches a scaled-down prototype across a pond. It works. The sphere bounces, skips, reaches the target. Lindemann is convinced. He takes the proposal to Churchill. Churchill grasps the potential immediately. If Wallis is correct, a small force of bombers could strike a blow that would cripple German industry for months, perhaps longer. He orders the project to proceed. The Air Ministry, overruled, grudgingly provides resources. Wallis is given access to Vickers Armstrong's facilities and a team of engineers. The clock begins ticking. The bomb, codenamed Upkeep, must be ready by spring 1943, when the reservoirs will be full and the dams most vulnerable. Wallis and his team work around the clock. They machine the cylindrical casing, design the spinning mechanism, calculate the precise weight distribution. The bomb must be exactly 9,000 pounds. It must spin at exactly 500 revolutions per minute. It must be released at exactly 60 feet altitude, traveling at exactly 240 miles per hour, at exactly the right distance from the dam wall. Any deviation will cause failure. Testing begins at Reculver, on the Kent coast. Modified Wellington bombers drop prototypes over the sea. Many shatter on impact. Others sink immediately. Wallis refines the design, strengthens the casing, adjusts the spin rate. Slowly, painfully, the weapon takes shape. By March 1943, it is ready. But who will deliver it? The mission requires pilots of extraordinary skill, crews of uncommon courage, and navigators capable of finding targets in darkness over enemy territory. The answer comes from Bomber Command. They will form a new squadron, handpicked, trained specifically for this one operation. Squadron 617 is born. Wallis travels to IAF Scampton to meet the crews. He explains the weapon, the physics, the risks. He does not sugarcoat the dangers. The men will fly at treetop level through flak. They will operate at altitudes where a single mistake means instant death. Many will not return. But if they succeed, they will change the war. The crews listen, absorb, accept. They begin training. Wallis watches them practice over the reservoirs of Derbyshire, flying so low that their propeller wash churns the water. He watches them perfect the timing, the altitude, the approach angle. He sees them become something extraordinary, a weapon as finely tuned as the bombs they will carry. And he feels the weight of responsibility. These men trust his calculations. Their lives depend on his mathematics being correct. On May 15, 1943, the final briefing takes place. The targets are revealed. Möhne, Eder, SOP. The routes are mapped. The defenses are described. Gibson asks Wallis directly, "Will it work?" Wallis meets his eyes and answers, "Yes." He does not mention the doubts that still gnaw at him, the variables he cannot fully control, 1,000 things that could go wrong. He simply says, "Yes." And now, on the evening of May 16th, the bombers are airborne. Wallis stands in the operations room at IAF Grantham, staring at the map on the wall. Markers represent the 3 waves of aircraft, inching across the North Sea toward Germany. He cannot go with them. He cannot help them. He can only wait, and hope that his obsession has not led good men to their deaths. May 16th, 1943. 23:15 hours. Over the North Sea. Gibson's Lancaster flies at 100 feet above the black water, moonlight painting silver streaks across the waves below. The air is smooth, the visibility perfect. Too perfect. Every detail of the aircraft will be visible to German coastal radar if they climb even slightly. They must stay low, hugging the surface, invisible. Inside ED 932G, the crew is silent. Each man focuses on his task. Pulford monitors engine temperatures and fuel consumption. Hutchison listens to his radio, waiting for any transmission from base or other aircraft. Spafford, in the nose, watches the darkness ahead through the bomb aimer's window. In the rear turret, Deering swivels his guns constantly, scanning for night fighters. Gibson's hands rest lightly on the control column. At this altitude, there is no margin for error. A moment's inattention, a sudden downdraft, and the Lancaster will cartwheel into the sea. Behind him, the other 8 aircraft of the first wave maintain spacing. Hopgood and M. Mother, Martin and P. Popsy, Young and A. Apple, Maltby and J. Johnny, Shannon and L. Leather, Maudsley and Z. Zebra, Astel and B. Baker, and Knight and N. Nuts. They are the elite. They are the point of the spay. The Dutch coast materializes ahead, a thin dark line against the horizon. Gibson adjusts course slightly, aiming for the gap in the coastal defenses that intelligence has identified. The gap is narrow, heavily patrolled. They will have perhaps 30 seconds of vulnerability. Then they will be over land, committed, no turning back. At 23:28 hours, they cross the coast. Trace of fire arcs up from below, strings of glowing red beads rising lazily, then accelerating past the cockpit with terrifying speed. Gibson banks slightly, threading between the flak positions. The Lancaster shudders as concussion waves from exploding shells buffet the airframe. Then they are through, over the flat Dutch countryside, racing toward Germany at 240 miles per hour. The landscape below is a patchwork of fields and canals, painted gray by moonlight. Towns pass beneath them, dark and sleeping. Occasionally, a searchlight stabs upward, but the beams are slow, uncoordinated. The Germans are not expecting low-level intruders. Their radar is configured for high-altitude bombers. The Lancasters are invisible ghosts, flying below the detection threshold. Gibson's navigator, Pilot Officer Torge Tyram, calls out course corrections from his station behind the cockpit. Steer 350. 2 minutes to the Rhine. Tyram is Canadian, precise, unflappable. He has memorized every landmark on the route. Navigation lights are forbidden. Every reference point must be visual, recognized from moonlit glimpses of rivers, forests, roads. The Rhine appears ahead, a silver ribbon winding through Germany. Gibson drops even lower, the Lancasters barely almost brushing the water. At this altitude, they are beneath the radar coverage of the Kammhuber line, the German defensive belt. But they are also fatally exposed to light flak, the 20mm and 37mm guns that dot every town and installation. One burst in the right place will kill them instantly. Behind Gibson, Hopgood's Lancaster suddenly takes fire. A flak position hidden near a bridge opens up. Traces walking across Mother's starboard wing. Hopgood fights the controls, keeping the aircraft level. Flames erupt from the starboard inner engine. He feathers the propeller, shuts down fuel flow. The fire dies. But Mother is wounded now, limping forward on 3 engines. They cross the Rhine. Ahead lies the Ruhr Valley, the industrial heart of Germany. Smoke from factory chimneys blurs the moonlight. The air smells of coal and chemicals. Below, rail yards and smelters sprawl across the landscape. This is the target region, the reason for everything. Somewhere ahead, 13 miles north-northeast of the town of Soest, lies the Möhne Dam. Gibson checks his watch, 0:15 hours, May 17th. They are on schedule. The dam should appear in 12 minutes. He reduces speed slightly, allowing the other aircraft to close up. They will attack in sequence, one at a time, each bomber making its run while the others orbit at a distance. Gibson will go first, drawing fire, allowing the others to observe the defenses and adjust their approach. Tyram calls out, visual on target in 4 minutes. Gibson acknowledges. His mouth is dry. His hands are steady. He has done this hundreds of times in training. But training did not include the curtain of flak that intelligence says protects the dam. 8 heavy guns, numerous light positions, searchlights, machine guns. The Germans know the dam is a potential target. They have fortified it accordingly. At 0:27 hours, Gibson sees it. The Möhne Dam rises ahead, a massive wall of gray concrete blocking the valley, holding back a vast sheet of water that glimmers in the moonlight. The reservoir stretches for miles, an inland sea. 2 towers stand atop the dam, medieval-looking structures that house the controls and anti-aircraft positions. Between the towers, the dam wall curves slightly, 112 feet thick at the base, tapering to 22 feet at the crest. It looks indestructible. Gibson keys his radio. All cooler aircraft. Target ahead. I'm going in. He pushes the throttles forward, the Lancaster accelerating to attack speed. Spafford, in the nose, readies the bomb aimer sight, the crude wooden contraption that must line up 2 points of light to achieve the correct release distance. The bomb aimer's job is simple in theory. When the 2 nails in the Y-shaped sight align with the towers on the dam, release the bomb. In practice, with the aircraft bucking and weaving through flak, with seconds to make the decision, it is nearly impossible. Gibson begins his run. He drops to 60 feet exactly, using an ingenious system Wallis has provided. 2 spotlights mounted under the aircraft, angled so that when their beams converge on the water, the Lancaster is at precisely the correct altitude. Pulford calls out, lights converging, 60 feet. Gibson holds the altitude rigidly, fighting the aircraft's tendency to climb. Below, the water rushes past. Ahead, the dam grows larger, filling the windscreen, and then the flak opens up. Trace of fire streams toward them from the towers, from positions on the shore, from every direction. The night explodes with light and violence. Shells burst around the cockpit, shrapnel rattling off the fuselage. Gibson does not flinch. He holds the course, straight and level, directly into the firestorm. Spafford calls, bomb spinning, speed at 500 RPM. The hydraulic motor beneath the aircraft spins the cylindrical bomb backwards, imparting the backspin that Wallis's calculations require. The Lancaster vibrates with the massive rotating weight. Left, left, steady. Spafford's voice is calm, guiding Gibson toward the release point. The dam towers align in his bomb sight. Steady, steady. Bomb gone. Gibson feels the Lancaster leap upward as 9,000 pounds of weight drops away. He pulls back on the control column, climbing hard, banking right to escape the flak. Behind them, the bomb falls, strikes the water with an enormous splash, and bounces. Once, twice, 3 times. Each skip carries it closer to the dam. Then it contacts the wall, grips with its backspin, and rolls down the face into the depths. Gibson clears the valley, circling wide. He counts 10, 20, 25. At 30 seconds, the bomb should detonate. He reaches 30. Nothing happens. 35 seconds. Still nothing. Gibson's heart sinks. Has the hydrostatic pistol failed? Has Wallis's design malfunctioned? Then the lake erupts. A massive column of water rises 1,000 feet into the air, illuminated by moonlight and explosions. The shockwave rolls across the valley. The dam trembles. But when the water column subsides, the wall stands intact. Gibson radios, Gunner 68A, the code indicating explosion against the dam. But not breached. Not yet. Hopgood begins his run. May 17, 1943. 0:35 hours. Over the Möhne Reservoir. Flight Lieutenant John Hopgood lines up Mother for the attack run. His starboard inner engine is still dead from the earlier flak hit. The Lancaster handles sluggishly, but Hopgood is an exceptional pilot. He compensates, adjusting trim, nursing the wounded aircraft toward the target. In the nose, his bomb aimer, Flight Sergeant John Fraser, peers through the sight. Behind them, the massive cylindrical bomb spins at 500 RPM, waiting. Hopgood drops to 60 feet, the spotlights converging on the water below. He accelerates to 240 miles per hour, the A-frame vibrating. The dam appears ahead, gray and enormous. The flak gunners have had time now to adjust their aim after Gibson's run. They are ready. As Mother crosses the shoreline, the flak opens up with redoubled intensity. Tracer rounds converge on the Lancaster from multiple positions. Shells burst above, below, beside the aircraft. Hopgood holds his course, flying through the storm. A 37mm round strikes the port wing, tearing through the fuel tank. Flames erupt, streaming back along the fuselage. The aircraft is on fire. Fraser calls, steady, left a bit, steady. Bomb gone. The weapon drops away, bouncing across the moonlit water. Hopgood pulls up desperately, trying to gain altitude, but the fire has spread to the port and engine. The propeller seizes. Mother staggers into the air, trailing flame. Bail out. Hopgood shouts over the intercom. Everyone out. Fraser, in the nose, kicks open the forward hatch and drops into the night. The wireless operator, Sergeant John Minchin, follows. In the rear of the aircraft, the other crew members scramble for the exits. But Hopgood and his flight engineer, Sergeant Charles Brennan, remain at the controls, fighting to keep the Lancaster level long enough for the others to escape. Mother clears the dam by seconds. Then the port wing collapses. The bomber cartwheels into the hillside beyond the reservoir, exploding in a ball of fire that lights up the valley. Hopgood and Brennan die instantly. In the wreckage, 4 other crew members perish. Only Fraser and Minchin survive, blown clear in the initial explosion. They will spend the rest of the war as prisoners. Behind the dying aircraft, Hopgood's bomb skips across the water and strikes the dam wall. It detonates 30 feet down, creating another massive explosion. Water geysers into the air. The dam shudders. But again, the wall holds. Gibson watches from his orbiting position, grief and frustration mixing. 2 bombs expended. 2 crews committed. The dam stands. P-Popsy, you're next. Gibson radios. Flight Lieutenant Harold Mick Martin acknowledges and begins his run. Martin is Australian, aggressive, fearless. He has flown 30 bombing missions already. He drops P-Popsy to wave-top height and charges the dam at full throttle. The flak is murderous now, a solid wall of fire. Martin weaves slightly, enough to spoil the gunner's aim without throwing off his bomb aimer's calculations. Shells burst all around the cockpit. The windscreen cracks. A fragment tears through Martin's flight suit, grazing his shoulder. He ignores it, holding the course. Bomb gone. The weapon drops, skips, strikes the wall. Martin pulls up violently, banking away from the dam. Behind him, the bomb detonates. The explosion is massive, a waterspout that dwarfs the previous ones. The dam trembles, chunks of concrete falling from the top. But when the water settles, the wall still stands. 3 bombs. 3 failures. The crew's morale begins to crack. Gibson makes a decision. He radios Squadron Leader Melvin Dingy Young in Apple. Dingy, attack now. Keep going until we crack it. Young, nickname for his habit of surviving ditched aircraft, acknowledges. He is calm, methodical. He will not rush. Young makes his approach from a slightly different angle, compensating for the lessons of the previous attacks. His bomb aimer, Flying Officer Vincent McCausland, lines up the sight with mechanical precision. The flak is intense, but Young does not deviate. Bomb gone. The weapon skips across the water perfectly, strikes the dam dead center between the towers, and sinks. The explosion, when it comes, is apocalyptic. A column of water rises 1,200 feet, carrying debris and fragments of concrete. The shockwave rolls across the reservoir, creating waves that slosh against the valley walls. For a moment, nothing seems different. Then, slowly, water begins pouring over the top of the dam. A crack has opened. Not large, perhaps 2 feet wide, but under the pressure of 140 million tons of water, it begins to widen. Gibson watches, hardly daring to breathe. The crack grows. Water cascades through an increasing volume. Chunks of concrete break away, tumbling down the face of the dam. The structure groans, a sound like the earth splitting. And then, with a roar that echoes across the valley, a section of the dam 250 feet wide collapses. Water explodes through the breach, a white wall of churning fury. The Möhne Dam has fallen. Gibson radios, nigger, the code word for successful breach. At RAF Grantham, Barnes Wallis hears the transmission. His legs give out. He sits down heavily, tears streaming down his face. His bomb works. His calculations were correct. But the price, Hopgood and his crew, burned alive in the wreckage of their mother. The price is terrible. At the dam, the water continues to pour through the breach, the opening widening by the minute. Below, in the Ruhr Valley, the flood races downstream. Factories, power stations, bridges, everything in the path of the water is swept away. The deluge reaches the industrial town of Neheim in minutes, tearing through buildings, drowning streets. It continues south, an unstoppable force, destroying everything it touches. Gibson orbits the dam, watching the destruction. He should feel triumph. Instead, he feels numb. He radios the remaining aircraft. Reform on me. We proceed to target Eder. 5 aircraft remain operational. Gibson's ED-932 Young's A Apple, Maltby's J Johnny, Shannon's L Leather, and Knight's N Nuts. Martin's P-Popsy has taken too much damage. He is ordered to return to base. Astell's B. Baker has been shot down en route, lost to flak near the town of Marbeck. The survivors turn southeast, toward the second target. The Eder Dam lies 35 miles away, nestled in a different valley. Unlike Möhne, it has no flak defenses. The approaches are too narrow, too difficult. The Germans never believed bombers could attack it. They were wrong. May 17, 1943. 1:15 hours. Approaching the Eder Dam. The Eder Dam is a monster. At 154 feet high, it is even more massive than the Möhne. It holds back 202 million tons of water in a reservoir that stretches for miles through narrow, forested valleys. But the approaches are nightmarish. To attack it, the Lancasters must fly down a winding valley, make a sharp turn around a castle top till called the Waldeck, drop to attack altitude while still tanning, then dive toward the dam which sits in a narrow gorge. There is no room for error. One miscalculation and the bomber will slam into a hillside or cartwheel into the water. Gibson arrives first and immediately sees the problem. He orbits the dam at 2,000 feet, studying the terrain. The valley is so narrow that the approach must be made in a diving tane, the aircraft banking at extreme angles while descending. The bomb must be released while still in the tane. Then the pilot must pull up violently to clear the far side of the gorge. In moonlight, at 240 miles per hour, while managing altitude, speed, and the alignment of the bomb site, it is, Gibson realizes, even more impossible than Möhne. He radios Shannon. "Dave, you make the first run. Watch the hills." Shannon acknowledges. He is Australian, known for his skill at low-level flying. If anyone can thread this needle, it is Shannon. He brings Leather around, lines up on the valley approach, and begins his descent. The castle on Waldeck Hill slides past Leather's port wing, close enough that Shannon can see individual stones in the moonlight. He banks hard, dropping into the gorge. The hills rise on either side, black walls of forest. The dam appears ahead, smaller than Möhne, more delicate-looking, but just as formidable. Shannon levels off at 60 feet, but the speed is wrong, too fast. His bomb aimer calls overspeed, and Shannon aborts, pulling up sharply to clear the ridge beyond the dam. Going around again, Shannon radios. He circles back, trying to bleed off speed while maintaining altitude in the tight valley. The second approach is better, but the altitude is wrong, 80 feet instead of 60. Another abort. Shannon's frustration crackles over the radio. Gibson watches, calculating. The valley makes the attack nearly impossible, but they must succeed. The Eder is a crucial target, perhaps more important than Möhne because its water feeds the Weser River and the Mittelland Canal, vital waterways for German industry. If it falls, the canal system will drain, cutting transportation links across northern Germany. Shannon makes a third approach. This time, the speed and altitude are correct, but the angle is wrong. He is too far to port. He aborts again, circling back. The crew is exhausted, hands shaking from adrenaline and concentration. On the fourth approach, Shannon flies the perfect line. The valley narrows around Leather. The castle flashes past. Shannon banks hard, levels, drops to 60 feet. His bomb aimer calls, "Bomb gone." The weapon drops, strikes the water, and bounces once, twice, 3 times. It hits the dam wall and sinks. Shannon pulls up violently, clearing the ridge with feet to spare. Behind him, the bomb detonates. Water geysers upward. The dam shakes, but the wall holds. Shannon has failed. Maltby goes next in J. Johnny. He is methodical, patient. He makes only 2 approaches before releasing his bomb. The weapon skips perfectly, strikes the dam, detonates. Another massive explosion. Another geyser of water and debris. But again, the wall stands. The dam seems invulnerable, mocking their efforts. Gibson debates whether to call off the attack. They have only 2 bombs left, Knight's End Nuts and Young's Apple. If both fail, the Eder will stand and the mission will be half completed. But half success is still failure. The dams must both fall to achieve the strategic objective. He makes his decision. "Dinghy, you're next. Make it count." Young acknowledges. He has already breached Möhne. He knows the weapon works. He simply must deliver it correctly. Young flies the approach like a machine, every movement precise. He navigates the valley without hesitation, banks around the castle, levels off at exactly 60 feet. His bomb aimer, McCausland, watches the dam grow in the bomb site. Everything is perfect. Speed, altitude, angle. Bomb gone. The weapon drops away. It skips across the water, each bounce calculated by Wallis's mathematics. It strikes the dam wall dead center. It sinks to precisely 30 feet depth. And when it detonates, the explosion is different from the others. Deeper, more focused. The shockwave punches through the concrete like a fist through plaster. Young pulls up and away. Behind him, the Eder dam cracks. A vertical fissure opens down the center of the wall. Water begins to pour through. Slowly at first, then with gathering force. The crack widens. Chunks of concrete tumble into the gorge below. And then, like Möhne before it, the dam fails. A section 200 feet wide collapses, releasing a torrent that fills the valley with white chaos. Gibson transmits, "Dinghy," the code word for Eder breached. At IAF Grantham, the operations room erupts in cheers. Barnes Wallis sits quietly, head in hands, overwhelmed. 2 dams breached. 2 impossible targets destroyed. His weapon has worked exactly as designed. But in the air over Germany, the cost continues to mount. Gibson orders the remaining aircraft to withdraw. They have expended their bombs. The mission is complete. But as they turn for home, Young's Apple takes fire from a flak position near the town of Ham. Shells rip through the port wing, severing fuel lines. Fire erupts. Young fights the controls, trying to gain altitude, but the Lancaster is doomed. It crashes into a field, killing Young and his entire crew instantly. Gibson leads the survivors northwest, toward the coast and safety. Knight's End Nuts, still carrying its bomb, is diverted to attack the Sop Dam, a secondary target. The Sop is an earth dam, not concrete, and requires a different attack method. The bomb must be dropped directly onto the crest, not bounced. Knight makes multiple runs in the narrow valley, finally releasing his weapon. It detonates on target, but the earth dam is more resilient than concrete. It cracks but does not breach. Knight turns for home, his mission incomplete but valiant. By 3 o'clock hours, the survivors are crossing the North Sea, flying east toward England and sunrise. Behind them, Germany is in chaos. The floods from Möhne and Eder are destroying everything in their path. Hundreds will die in the torrents, workers, prisoners, civilians. Factories will be drowned, power stations wrecked, bridges swept away. The industrial Ruhr will be paralyzed for months. But the price has been terrible. Of 19 Lancasters that launched, 8 have been lost. 53 crew members are dead. 3 are prisoners. The survivors are exhausted, traumatized, knowing that friends will not return. As dawn breaks over the English coast, Gibson brings ED-932AG in for landing at IAF Scampton. The wheels touch concrete at 4:15 hours. The mission, Operation Chastise, is over. May 17, 1943. Dawn. RAF Scampton, Lincolnshire. The returning Lancasters taxi to their dispersal points in the grey light of morning. Ground crews rush forward, seeing the damage. Shredded tail sections, shattered windscreens, wings punctured by flak fragments. The aircraft that do not return leave empty spaces on the apron, silences that speak louder than words. Guy Gibson climbs out of ED-932AG, his flight suit soaked with sweat despite the cool air. He looks older than he did 12 hours ago. His crew follows him out, moving mechanically, not speaking. Around them, other surviving crews emerge from their aircraft. Faces are blank with exhaustion. Some men weep. Others simply stay. Barnes Wallis arrives from Grantham, his face haggard. He seeks out Gibson, needing to know, needing to see the man who led the attack. They meet beside ED-932AG. Wallis tries to speak, to express something. Gratitude, pride, grief. But the words choke in his throat. Gibson simply nods. There is nothing to say. The mission succeeded. Men died. Both truths will endure. In Germany, the sun rises over a landscape transformed by water. The Ruhr Valley is a muddy wasteland. Where factories stood, now there are ruins. Where bridges crossed rivers, now there are twisted wreckage. The floods have killed 1,294 people, 749 French, Belgian, and Soviet prisoners of war working in labor camps, 493 German civilians. Entire towns have been swept away. The hydroelectric power stations that fed the industrial complex are destroyed. Coal mines are flooded. Steel production is halted. The psychological impact is even greater than the physical damage. The German population believed the dams were invulnerable. Their breach shattered their confidence. If the British can destroy targets like Möhne and Eder, what else can they destroy? The myth of German invulnerability, carefully cultivated by Nazi propaganda, cracks like the concrete walls that failed in the night. Albert Speer, Hitler's Minister of Armaments, immediately grasps the danger. He diverts thousands of workers to repair the dams, resources desperately needed elsewhere. The repairs take 5 months and consume materials that would have built tanks and aircraft. The strategic effect ripples outward. Every resource spent on the dams is a resource denied to the front lines. The war effort bleeds from a wound that will not close. For the RAF, the cost of Operation Chastise prompts deep debate. 53 men dead for 2 dams breached. Is the exchange acceptable? The answer depends on how one calculates value. In purely strategic terms, the damage to German industry justifies the losses. But the men who died were not numbers on a ledger. They were husbands, sons, brothers. In the villages of England, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, 53 families received telegrams that begin, "We regret to inform you." Barnes Wallis carries the guilt for the rest of his life. He designed the weapon, calculated the requirements, promised it would work. He was right. It did work. But the price of proving him correct was measured in blood. He never designs another weapon. After the war, he turns his genius to civilian aviation, developing supersonic aircraft and swing-wing designs. But he never speaks publicly about the bouncing bomb without visible distress. Guy Gibson is awarded the Victoria Cross, Britain's highest military decoration. The other surviving crew members receive Distinguished Service Orders and Distinguished Flying Crosses. They are celebrated as heroes, paraded before the press, used in propaganda films. Gibson writes a book, Enemy Coast Ahead, describing the raid. But heroism is a weight as much as an honor. Gibson, haunted by the faces of men he led to their deaths, volunteers for more operations. He dies in action in September 1944, flying Mosquito bomber over the Netherlands. He is 26 years old. 617 Squadron, the Dam Busters, continues to operate throughout the war. They become specialists in precision attacks, striking targets other squadrons cannot reach. They sink the German battleship Tirpitz with massive tallboy bombs. They destroy V-weapon sites and U-boat pens. But they never repeat the bouncing bomb attack. The weapon is used once more, against the Dortmund Ems Canal, but the results are mixed. The bouncing bomb is too specialized, too dependent on specific conditions. After the war, it fades into history, a brilliant solution to a unique problem. The Möhne Dam is repaired by September 1943. The Eder Dam takes longer, not fully restored until 1945. But the scars remain. Standing at the dams today, you can see where the breaches occurred. The concrete is slightly different in color. The repairs visible. Plaques commemorate the events of May 16th to 17th, 1943. The reservoirs are full again, holding back their millions of tons of water. But the walls are haunted by the ghosts of the night when they fell. In the village of Gun, below the Möhne Dam, there is a small cemetery. Among the graves are headstones for some of the victims of the flood, workers, families, children. They died because engineers on opposite sides of a war calculated that destroying dams would shorten the conflict. They were not soldiers. They simply lived in the wrong place at the wrong time. War's mathematics are cold, but its consequences are painfully human. The bouncing bomb remains one of World War II's most ingenious weapons. It represents the apex of a certain kind of thinking. The belief that sufficient ingenuity can overcome any obstacle, that the impossible is merely the difficult requiring more effort. Barnes Wallis proved this true. But he also learned its limits. Genius can design weapons of extraordinary power, but it cannot protect the men who must deliver them into fire and darkness. On May 16th each year, a small ceremony is held at IAF Scampton. Veterans gather, fewer each year, to remember the night 617 Squadron changed the war. They stand beside Lancaster bombers in museums, running their hands along the fuselage the way Guy Gibson did before takeoff. They remember friends who never came home, who burned in the wreckage of Lancasters over German fields, who drowned in the North Sea, who died in prisoner of war camps. And they remember the dams, the massive walls of concrete that stood against everything conventional weapons could deliver, until one man dreamed of making a bomb skip like a stone, and 19 crews took that dream into the night. The dams fell. The valleys flooded. The war shifted, in ways large and small. And 53 men paid with their lives to prove that with enough courage, enough skill, and enough sacrifice, there is no such thing as an impossible target. The sun rises over the Ruhr Valley now as it has for decades, shining on dams that hold back their reservoirs, on factories that produce goods instead of weapons, on towns rebuilt from the ruins. The scars have healed, but the memory remains. In engineering textbooks, the bouncing bomb is studied as a masterpiece of applied physics. In history books, Operation Chastise is analyzed as a model of precision attack. But for the men who flew it, and for the families who lost them, it will always be something else. A night when the impossible became real, and the price of victory was measured in empty seats at breakfast tables and names carved on memorial stones. Barnes Wallis died in 1979, aged 92. Guy Gibson's name is inscribed on the RAF Bomber Command Memorial in London. The Lancasters of 617 Squadron rest in museums, their bomb bays empty, their weapons silent, and the dams stand, repaired and strong, holding back the waters that once drowned a valley. The night of May 16th to 17th, 1943, is gone, faded into history, but it endures in the walls that fell and were rebuilt, in the graves of men who did not retain, and in the lesson that genius without courage is merely theory, but courage armed with genius can move mountains, or break dams, and change the world.